Hi, this is an open letter to Taejah, Hinna, Grant, and Julia, the four kids chosen by the United States government as pawns for a gun control advocation. Now I recognize you kids, if you're seeing this, it's probably only years after you were used as puppets. You might not see it at all, but other people can benefit from an explanation of what you kids represented in the videos where you said, we should have a gun ban. You kids are a great example of a very popular and subtle form of child abuse that is very popular in the United States. And that is to meticulously train a kid what to think. Not how to think, what to think. And then unleash them and say, look, kids are saying it.
These are some pretty smart letters from some pretty smart young people.
Dear President Obama, I think there should be some changes in the law with guns. It's a free country, but I recommend there needs to be a limit with guns. Please don't let people own machine guns or other powerful guns like that. I think there should be a good reason to get a gun. I think there should be a limit about how many guns a person can own. We should learn from what happened at Sandy Hook Elementary School. I feel really bad about what just happened. Sincerely, Grant, age 8. P.S. I know you're doing your best.
These are some pretty smart letters from some pretty smart young people.
Dear President Obama, my name is Hinna. I am a third grader in school number 8. I just wanted to tell you that I feel really sad also. I feel terrible for the parents who lost their children. Mr. President, can we do something which will stop all of these terrible problems? After watching the news all day on Friday, one question popped in my head, and that question is, can we stop using guns? I think if there are no guns on the street, no one could get hurt. Bullets don't have eyes. It can hurt anyone. I am really scared of guns and criminals around the world. I love my country and I want everyone to be happy and safe. No guns, no guns, no guns, no guns. Thank you, Hinna.
These are some pretty smart letters from some pretty smart young people.
Dear President Obama, my name is Julia. I'm an 11-year-old. There are no words to explain how sad I am about the school shooting. Even though I'm not scared for my safety, I'm scared for others. I have 4 brothers and sisters, and I know that I will not be able to bear the thought of losing any of them. I may not be that into politics, but my opinion is it should be very hard for people to buy guns. The only thing they do is harm or kill, and guns should only be used in the most horrible event where others will get hurt if they are not. I know that laws have to be passed by Congress, but I beg you to try very hard to make guns not allowed, not just for me, but for the whole United States. My love and regrets, Julia.
These are some pretty smart letters from some pretty smart young people.
Dear Mr. President, my name is Taejah. I am 10 years old. I am writing to you to ask you to stop gun violence. I am very sad about the children who lost their lives in Connecticut, so I thought I would write to you to stop gun violence. Thank you, Mr. President. Your American Taejah.
You kids are a great example of a very subtle form of child abuse that is very popular in the United States. And that is to meticulously train a kid what to think. Not how to think, what to think. And then unleash them and say, look, kids are saying it. And you can't argue against kids. That's the sign of our times. But imagine this. You kids are just pawns and you don't understand the situation in the world. No one's going to show you this video. No one is going to give you the mouthpieces of the policy. They're not going to give you this response. They're not going to say, hey kids, here's some information you might want to consider. No, because you are being used to sell a product, and that product is a gun ban. One thing I'll mention about the demographics used. There was a white boy, a black boy, a slightly ethnic girl, and a slightly more ethnic girl. Plenty of people will think that happened by accident, or that it was sort of a choice to represent diversity. It was as structured as a McDonald's commercial. Who could argue that it wouldn't be? That the government's just going to randomly pick people. They pick the demographics that make it seem like a white. Everybody wants this: blacks, whites, vaguely ethnic, slightly more ethnic. That's nothing against the kid's ethnicity. That's pointing out the racist mindset of those who say we have to get these demographics, because to the government, races are just demographics. Like, how do we appeal to this demographic? How do we appeal to that? The lowest common denominator is what the government goes after. But you kids, here's something to think about when it comes to gun control. And of course, you've been meticulously abused and taught what to think. But the fact is, I'm here in Mexico. I'm not in the United States. Mexico has a gun ban. You can't have guns. And they have one of the highest gun murder rates in the world. If you ban guns, then only the government and gangs will have guns, just like it is here in Mexico. The gangs in Mexico, and oftentimes the government, kill a lot of people, and there's a gun ban. Let me tell you about those dogs in a minute. The gun ban simply means that people who obey the gun ban can't have guns. Criminals don't obey laws, kids. Oftentimes neither does the government. Down here in Mexico, where there's a disarmed populace, thousands of Mexicans were killed because the United States government, the ones that you were made a pawn for in your video, the United States government gave thousands of guns effectively to the gangs down here through a thing called the ATF Gun Walk, or Operation Fast and Furious. Thousands of Mexicans are being killed down here because of the US government giving guns to gangs amongst an unarmed populace. The reason for all those dogs that keep barking? Everyone here has dogs because they're not allowed to have guns, and dogs will help prevent people being able to attack you by surprise. It's for crime in general, not just for violent crime, but it's for crime in general. People can't protect themselves. Everyone has dogs down here. Let me give you kids 2 more examples of the way government has used people like you to trick and lie to people and convince people that there's this wide range of support as they do whatever they want to anyways. We have you guys, which were used for a liberal cause. The Democrats want a gun ban, and so they use you kids because people can't argue against kids. Now, very similarly, in very recent past, the Republicans facilitated, along with the Democrats, but especially the Republicans and George Bush, facilitated a war against Iraq where hundreds of thousands of people have died. Just like now they're saying the kids want a gun ban, so we should do it. And you can't argue against the kids. What was popular for the Iraq War and is still ongoing is support the troops. Suddenly you're not supporting a policy of killing hundreds of thousands of people and facilitating their death. You're supporting the troops. So you're not disarming the population, you're supporting children who, they bless their little hearts. You're being condescended to, you kids. You're being lied to. You're being told what to think, not how to think. And you're not being told that here in Mexico, thousands are dying because they're disarmed and the government in the United States gave guns to gangs. A lot of people want to keep their guns in the United States because they don't trust the United States government. They don't trust them when they say, just disarm and we'll take care of you. Kids, you cannot tell criminals to turn in their guns. They won't do it. If anyone turns in their guns after a proposed or a passed gun law reform, only non-criminals will do that. Only non-criminals will give up their guns, and the only people left, just like here in Mexico, will be the government and the gangs. They're the only ones that will have guns. You guys heard about Sandy Hook because it was on the TV and your parents fed it into you, but all over the United States, people die a lot from gun violence. But it's very concentrated in certain areas, and it's not as simple as disarming everyone, and that way those areas and those specific criminals will give up their guns. The vast majority of gun violence is criminal on criminal or gang on gang, and not all gang members are criminal, no matter what any of you people might want to sideline and say. Another example, so that's the Republicans support the troops, using the troops as a pawn. You children are being used as a pawn for gun control. My dad was forced to fight in the Vietnam War. A lot of men were forced to fight in the Vietnam War. A lot of men went to jail, some for years, for refusing to fight in the Vietnam War. You were called a traitor, just like you're called a traitor if you don't support the troops, and you'll be called terrible if you don't support your kids. A lot of men went to jail for years for refusing to fight in the Vietnam War. My dad fought in the Vietnam War. He was forced. It turned out that the government, the United States government, the same one that gives thousands of guns to people who murder Mexicans here in Mexico, the same U.S. government that tells you got to support the troops. The U.S. government during the Vietnam War lied about an event. It's called the Gulf of Tonkin. They lied and said we were attacked, and that was the justification to force thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of men to fight in a war. It was a lie. It's been acknowledged as a lie now, just so you know, anybody who might not realize that. The Gulf of Tonkin was acknowledged to be a lie. My dad was forced, as were hundreds of thousands of other men, to fight in Vietnam. About 58,000 United States men were killed in Vietnam, and a lot more Vietnamese, Cambodians, etc. So you kids are being pawns. You're being lied to. Even though you wrote those things out and you believe those things, again, you're being taught what to think, not how to think. You're being lied to and you're being used in a conspiracy, a conspiring of disarming a population to render them helpless and unprotected.